FAIRtax is coming, don't stand in the way. FAIRtax is coming across the USA. FAIRtax is coming, clean up this mess. We got to get rid of the IRS. Hey, hey! Hey, hey!
Hello and welcome once again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
We are the
FAIRtax Guys.
We've got a very special episode for you today. Just recently, we're going to get right into this. National Director of Social Media, who is also a member of the Board of Directors of the National Group Americans for Fair Taxation, Randy Fisher, recently got an opportunity to sit down with Representative Ted Yoho, who represents Florida's 3rd Congressional District, and talk to him about what you can do to get your congressmen and your senators on board with the fair tax. So let's get right into it with Randy Fisher and Congressman Ted Yoho.
Congressman, this is Randy Fisher. I'm here today on behalf of Americans for Fair Taxation, which is the parent organization nationally for the fair tax movement. And first of all, we wanted to thank you for being a co-sponsor. And we really would like to get a perspective for our grassroots members across the country as to what it's like on the Hill and inside the Beltway when it comes to fair tax. And one of the things we wanted to know was when you're on the Hill, in Congress, in hearings, how many opportunities do you really get to talk to other members about not only tax policy, but the fair tax?
Well, Randy, so many of the things we talk about up there deals with the economy, growing the economy, and the best way to do that is get the government out of things that are blocking the economy. And the fair tax comes up, pretty much every time in those discussions. I know when we talk about it, we talk about the fair tax and the benefits to the economy, the benefits to America, the benefits to bringing manufacturers back to this country. And it's just something that we've got to keep pushing. We can't back off. And you guys do a great job of educating the grassroots. And, so there's plenty of opportunities for that to come up. We have a new chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. And, with Mr. Ryan, those things should be on the forefront of that.
And Congressman Ryan, as we understand it, is going to be adopting what he calls reality scoring, as opposed to the old static scoring as to whether or not fair tax will be able to keep a revenue neutral position on tax revenues. Is that your understanding? And if so, how much do you think that helps, if at all?
Well, I think that's something they look at, because what their consternation or concern is if we go backwards on our revenue stream. And, with the unknown, like anything you step into the unknown, people are afraid to move forward. But when you look at the study that your organization has done with the fair tax and the research, that over the 20 years and the millions of dollars, over $20 million put into the research, I feel confident that this would be the way to move forward. I can say last year when Dave Camp was there, that the fair tax was the first time of course that was my first session, but it was really the first time they had talked about it in committee, and we talked to Dave Camp, and we look forward to having those conversations with Paul Ryan.
Now, there's obviously two caucuses in Congress, the Democrat caucus and the Republican caucus. When you get an opportunity to talk to your Democrat counterparts, what is it that they have typically in the way of an objection to even looking at the fair tax as a viable alternative? Well,
there's just a lot of misconceptions, a lot of misinformation out there, and they're just ignorant in the fact that they don't know what this is. The biggest thing we hear all the time, it's like the flat tax. No, it's not like the flat tax. It's different than that. And then the other thing I think we hear the biggest objection to, and again, this comes from misinformation or lack of information, is that it's going to really penalize the people on the lower end of the economic scale and reward the people at the upper end of the economic scale. And we know the difference, that it doesn't do that. It's a fair tax. And, I think the name speaks for itself. And then when you start explaining that, you can just see them kind of shifting and saying, well, where do I get more information? Of course, we talk about the different books that are out there, the Mr. Linder's and Mr. Bort's book. We recommend both of those. If you read the first one, make sure you read the second one.
Now, in terms of trying to persuade opponents, do you think it's a valuable piece of information to let them know that the fair tax not only is a total replacement for our current system, it's the first time when wealth would actually be taxed and not just income in terms of wealth as it's spent.
I think those are things that you need to get out there and talk about. When we talk about taxing, instead of, people are so used to in this country of taxing your income. And most people, as we all know in this room, that the individual doesn't really, it's kind of like a hidden tax. They don't know how much taxes are really coming out of their paycheck. They get the net. When you look at your gross, there's a big discrepancy in there. And so when we talk about this too, we throw out there, and this is, I think, one of the biggest selling points of this tax is how would you like to keep your whole check? And, when you talk about it's a tax on the wealth, it's a tax on consumption, versus, on your income. And income should never be taxed. It's a regressive tax that, really brings down productivity. And it seems to hurt the people on the lower scale than the upper scale.
And is it fair to say we should emphasize the fact that the payroll tax hurts the working poor the most? Yeah,
no, it really does. It takes a bigger percentage of those people on the lower scale, and I can attest to that. I used to be on that lower end, and it takes a bigger proportion of your taxes out of there, because the person working on the lower end, they don't benefit from all the tax loopholes on the upper end or of a business owner. And that's one of the beauties of this, is it gets rid of all that. And being a business owner, taking advantage of every tax break I could, or ways to reroute your income, we did. I mean, that's the way the tax system is set up. It forces people to do that. But as much as advantage as I did take of that, I would be willing to forego those and get rid of them if April 15th was another day and the IRS was not breathing down our neck, or the threat of the IRS being there. And if I could keep 100% of my income, then I can determine how much money I do want to spend in taxes.
And for presenting the fair tax to the grassroots and trying to emphasize how it will help Social Security and how it will help Medicare in the future, what do you think we should be telling them as far as the strongest points?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I see there is, number one, is revenue neutral to start with. So it's not going to change Social Security, Medicare as far as the income coming in. But I think with the job growth you'll see with new industries coming back to our country, the added income coming into our state treasury or the national treasury, that you'll see that income and it'll help stabilize Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security.
And is that something we should be emphasizing to our seniors to be thinking about in terms of their children and their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren?
I think we need to emphasize that to everybody. And, I have to give you guys credit, and I think you may have heard me say this before, on the grassroots level, where you're out talking to the individuals, a lot of the citizens in small pockets have great information. They're the ones out there carrying the banner, promoting the fair tax. Where I see the breakdown is in the corporate world. We've had corporations come in. In fact, we had a group of them that employed 25% of the employees in America, and they were there for tax reform with Dave Camp. And I brought up the fair tax. I says, have you guys studied the fair tax in your accounting department? Not one of them had. Most of them hadn't even heard of it. And they had never run the numbers to see if it's beneficial to their business model. And if we can get those people behind this, you're going to see it gain a lot more traction.
So step one for our national grassroots organization is to build business contacts, business communication, and get the business community on board. Would that be a fair description?
Well, I think you already done step one, and that's the grassroots. You guys have done a tremendous amount with the books of Mr. Linders and Mr. Bortz. I would move into another phase, but keep the grassroots with the individuals out there with the narrative. How'd you like to keep your whole paycheck instead of sending it to the federal government? How'd you like to be in control of how much you do pay in taxes? And then start another grassroots with industry. Get business people, business owners that believe in this out there talking to other business people. And if you can get the business community behind this, I think you'll see a game changer. We're in an environment today in America where 70% of Republicans, Democrats, Independents want tax reform. So it's a no-brainer. there is going to be something, and I like to be on the proactive side to where we're directing the narrative and the direction that we want to go, and I think you have the best opportunity now, but it's going to take a massive effort by all of us. We can't grow weary and back up on this.
So what do we tell our grassroots supporters in terms of how they should approach their own congressmen and their representatives to communicate with them about the fair tax?
I think there's multiple ways. It depends on their representative, the congressman or woman. If they're doing town halls, live town halls, go to them and ask them. Encourage them, not encourage them, but just say, we support the fair tax. We hope you will too. It's going to be a big issue for us the next time we decide who to vote for. Be bold about it. Don't be disrespectful, but just talk about it. I know we do a series of town halls. We do both live town halls, teletown halls. Any chance you get to converse and have that interchange with your representative, have that talk about the fair tax and question them. And what I've seen up there is there's a lot of people that don't have the information of what the fair tax does or doesn't do. They hear these stories and they run from it. They think it's the flat tax. They think it's going to deprive people on the lower income scales, and they just don't understand it. They think it's I heard somebody on an interview the other day said it was going to be a 33% national sales tax on top of what you're already paying. And those are the things that on the grassroots, educate the people, educate your representatives if they don't, and it's through town halls, emails, associations like yours, National Write Your Congressman, any way you can contact them, editorials, and then if you get that personal ability to talk to that representative, just ask them point blank, where do you stand on the fair tax?
And typically the best place to do that would be in a public setting, a town hall setting, as opposed to trying to set a one-on-one communication?
I think in a one-on-one situation's fine. I would do it in a town hall. I'd do it in the airport. Probably wouldn't do it in a restaurant if they're sitting there with their family. But, things move so rapid and things are coming at us all the time that if you can get their attention and just tell them where you stand on it. Say, man, I'm a big proponent of the fair tax. Have you looked at it? Would you be willing to support it? And try to get a meeting with them if they're not familiar with it.
What was it? What was the one thing that triggered you, that made you decide, I'm going to co-sponsor HR 25. I'm going to be actively supporting the fair tax?
Well, Randy, I used to be a business owner, and writing checks to the IRS was probably one of the biggest ones. In fact, I wrote one into the six figures, was my last quarterly payment, which really hurt. And then I went to a client's house right after that. She says, the problem with people in America is they don't pay enough in taxes. And I'm thinking, I don't have a problem paying my taxes. It's how my government spends that. And, the notices from the IRS, and you try to get an answer from the IRS or to clear up something. They say you didn't pay enough, or you paid too much, or you're late on this payment. To try to get that rectified, and it takes you months, if not a year. And then even when you think it has it fixed, you get another notice. And, if we could get by without the IRS, which I feel we can as a nation, and we go to a different taxing or revenue stream for the government, I think we'll all be better served.
I want to shift gears for a second. I wanted to talk a little bit about social media and the utility of social media to influence Congress, if it does at all. I noticed that you're very active on social media, at least on Facebook, and you post repeatedly exactly what you're doing, what you're thinking, and what's going on. Generally in Congress, and I know you don't know all 435 and whether they do or don't use social media, but just generally, how effective do you think communicating with Congress is through social media?
I think it's real effective. We have people that scan that stuff. There's alerts out there where we can find out what's going on if we're involved with it, or if there's a topic that we're interested. And so we have people on our team that tell us what's going on. When we get phone calls or a lot of emails or a lot of hits on our Facebook, if they're all under one subject, those garner a lot of attention. And, again, if people are respectful, those gain more attention. If people are, belligerent on those kind of get pushed to the side for a little bit. We listen to them, but they don't carry the weight of somebody trying to solve a problem and looking for solutions. So any form of contact is great. Social media today is really what most people are going by, and it's the best way to communicate for us to the younger generation, to get that information out there. And even the seniors today are getting more active in social networks.
As far as social media, do you actually ever yourself get a chance to look at any of the FAIRtax related social media posts on Facebook or Twitter?
Yeah, I mean, you guys send me stuff. I read that. I read articles on different magazines and editorials, or not editorials, excuse me, but publications that we get. We look at that. This is something that, you've always got to stay refreshed on this, because we get asked questions on this all the time.
Both Twitter and Facebook, do you think both are useful, or one more than the other?
Probably Facebook is what we prefer. I know we use Twitter quite a bit. We talk about stuff, it goes out.
I wanted to ask you about an internet-based site called PopVox. And I don't know whether you've heard of PopVox or not. First of all, have you ever heard of it?
Not until I read your information that you sent me. But I'm sure people on our team know about it.
All right. And PopVox is a way for people to communicate with Congress, specifically their own district representative, and express an opinion on any piece of pending legislation. They can say yes, they can say no, and they can post a reason why. And our understanding is that PopVox actually is monitored by the Democrat caucus on a direct connection, because it provides a large amount of demographics, because they can typically tell not only city, state, congressional district, but age, and then they have ways of knowing voting propensities from that. Is there any move in the Republican caucus that you know of to make any strong use of PopVox?
Yeah, there is. I know on the NRCC side, Reince Priebus, they've got a whole new team going in there trying to catch up to where the Democrats were on this. But I know it gets monitored all over the Hill. The Hill is listening to stuff all the time. They're picking up bits and pieces. If I say something about the Republican Party, or say Mr. Boehner, that stuff goes right to their office, and so they're following it. Plus, we have roundtable discussions up there in our Republican conference. We meet with Kathy McMorris Rogers, and so we meet with the people up there, and we talk about this, and we talk about the FAIRtax. Of course, you've got a great champion up there with Rob Woodall, but we just need more people talking about this on the Hill. The grassroots effort to the business community, and any chance we get to talk about this, we sure like to.
We've talked about, as a national organization, the question of whether to have a Washington office or not have a Washington office. Do you feel like there's any strong advantage to having a Washington office, or disadvantage to not having one?
I think there's a disadvantage not to have one, but I don't think you have to have it. I think you need to have a presence up there. How often does your team go to Washington and talk to members?
Monthly. We have our president, monthly? Steve Hayes, our national legislative liaison, Peggy Green Ernst, who's in Texas. They make monthly visits. They stay for 3 days. They schedule an average of about 16 to 18 visits over a 3-day period.
You just need to go up there. And you brought up a good point here, because roughly there's 46,000 pieces of legislation come out every year. Washington, it's like standing in the vortex of a tornado. And if you're not in there sticking your arm in there to say, hey, you need to pay attention, this is coming up, we don't see it, because it's so busy up there. Despite what the media says we don't get anything done, it's so busy up there that you have to be present. And the groups that go championing whatever cause it is, the more active they are, the more educated their members are, and I would encourage you to do that. And if you can't swing a presence up there nationally, just have your members, have your citizens, the constituents from those people's districts go up there, because we listen to those people.
So we should make a point whenever any of our members, particularly those on the board of directors or those who are the most involved, whenever they're in Washington, D.C., they should make a point of trying to visit their members.
I sure would, and just ask your representative, where do you stand on the fair tax? The other thing is other industries that are fighting against this. The realtors. Everybody wants to keep their mortgage interest deduction. We need to educate those industries of why, you will give this up, but this is the benefit you're going to gain from that. And, we have to educate those kind of industries and that's why I said we've got to get industry behind this.
So is there any other strategic element that you see that we as a grassroots national organization need to be doing that you think we've overlooked so far?
Just more. I know you guys have done a Herculean effort. I see you guys at different meetings. I see people wearing FAIRtax hats. It's just something that we need to keep pushing. I don't want to say rebrand it, but maybe a new way of getting out there. Your radio shows is a great thing to do. More stuff on social media, getting into the new generation, the millennials. The millennials are going to be the largest voting bloc in this next go-around. Start educating them now so that they can talk up and ask questions about this. When you hear a representative talk negative about this or not talking the truth, offer to sit down and educate them what it does and doesn't do, or say, excuse me, Congressman, what you said is not really factual. Here are the facts. I think those things are the things that you want to do, and try to get on the talk show host. Encourage debate. Encourage somebody to challenge you why this isn't good. Again, you asked me what made me want to champion this and get on this. It's less government. It's less intrusive government. I don't have to worry about a government agency cracking down on me, a non-responsive government agency. I don't like the idea of April 15th as the tax day that everybody has to worry about, the thousands of dollars that it would take us to prepare a return. Life shouldn't be that difficult. And if we want to grow the economy, the simpler we make the process of owning a business, of hiring people, paying taxes to the federal government through some way, because it has to be funded. The simpler we make that, the more people are compliant, and the more people will, fund it.
Let me mention three things very quickly that we are doing, and if you have a moment, you can think about these and react to them. Whiteboard animations. We find that 90-second to 3-minute maximum whiteboard animations about how does it work, what is the fair tax. That's our number one priority now, and when you go to our website soon, there will be an automatic whiteboard that will pop up, and it will explain in 90 seconds to 2 minutes how the fair tax works. Good idea, bad idea?
I think that's a great idea, and I think I saw a demonstration of that at a presentation that you did.
Calculator, the fair tax calculator versus the income tax calculator. You take your number off your 1040, you take your spendable money that you intend to spend on new goods and services in a year, you compare your tax rate under the two. Good idea, bad idea? I
think that's a great idea. And I think also talking to people about, look at your gross, look at your net. How'd you like to keep your gross? I think just driving at home, how'd you like to have more money at the end of the month instead of less? Just the things that people can relate to. And the more you can make it relatable to the people, the more they'll get behind it.
And to the youngest, we're going to encourage a team of retired teachers to volunteer to go into the schools to give presentations to sophomores, juniors, seniors, and maybe even younger students on our tax system, today's tax system, and the fair tax. Good idea, bad idea? I
think that can get kind of bogged down. You got to make sure that person going in there is relatable to the younger people and find out what they want, how this would affect them. If you can show them how it would save, or they would get their whole check at the end of the work period, what that would equate to them, how many pairs of Nikes, or what they could do with that extra money, and then they could determine how much taxes they want to pay by their buying habits.
And of course, we, as any organization, have to fund ourselves, so we now have what's called the FAIRtax logo store. So you mentioned seeing people in FAIRtax gear, and I wanted to make sure that you knew that we had the opportunity to provide you here today.
Red, white, and blue, too. Look at that.
By choice, one option, one color. a FAIRtax hat. So.
Well, I appreciate it, and I appreciate the opportunity to come on here. And anytime you guys get up in D.C., feel free to let us know. And if you ever want to get a group of congressmen together, we can always, pull people together, and then from there we'll go out and talk more about this.
Thank you, sir. You've been a tremendous supporter of FAIRtax, and we appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys. Keep it up. Keep the fight up. Don't grow weary in well-doing.
Great interview there. Lots of good information. And again, our thanks to Congressman Yoho and, of course, to Randy Fisher to sit down and come up with all that. And, Ron, you got some notes there you want to go into.
Yeah, I'm a very good note taker. You know those programs on TV where they watch an interview or a debate or something, and then the host spend a half hour telling you what you just saw? We're not going to do that. Okay. Anyways, the first thing that really impressed me was with Randy's first question, and the congressman was mentioning how in tax policy debates, whatever they're talking about when it comes to tax policy, tax reform, and so forth, when he said that the fair tax comes up pretty much every time. That's very encouraging.
That's very encouraging, absolutely, because the media doesn't always report that.
No, and we've been busting our butts for years now to get it out in front of people, so that was very gratifying to hear that. I was very happy about that. Obviously, he has the same problems with people who are misinformed about the fair tax as we do, when we set up a booth at an event and so forth, and people say, oh, it's regressive, it'll hurt the poor, and we explain that problem away. So he has the same issues, he has the same challenges that we do, except that it's with other Congress people or staffers.
Well, that is the fair tax's biggest problem, is that it's so easy to demagogue and misrepresent.
Yep.
And there are, very strong interests that are trying to do just that because they don't want it to happen.
Yep. There's one little issue here that I would improve upon what Mr. Yoho said when he said it's a revenue issue, so therefore funding for Social Security and Medicare will be protected. I would go so far as to say that funding for Social Security and Medicare would be even better under the fair tax. Because
you broaden your base.
Yeah, exactly right. Right now, Social Security and Medicare are funded by people who get paychecks, not by people who get dividends from their huge investments and so forth. So, like you say, Bob, it's going to broaden the base. Every time somebody makes a purchase or pays for a service, they'll be helping to fund Social Security and Medicare. So, my take is it'll be better.
And of course, we wanted to get in also on the social media angle.
Yeah.
That it really doesn't surprise me that the congressman himself and a lot of the people in Congress, the congressional representatives, aren't that hugely familiar with PopVox personally. But they've all got huge staffs. They all got people whose sole job it is to keep an eye on social media and see what's going on here. So it is still, as we've been telling you, an excellent way to make your opinions known to your representative is to use PopVox.
Yep, and exactly what Bob said, because his chief of staff was in the room, and he looked over towards her, and she said, yeah, indicating, yes, we're very familiar with PopVox. His comments I've heard before about the corporate world needs some education about the fair tax. That story that he related about the meeting with the business types that represented about a quarter of the employees in the country, and they were woefully underinformed about the fair tax, and that's something that we need to work on.
So if you know any business people, ask them just straight out, what's your opinion of the fair tax? And if you get a blank stare, educate them, because I guarantee you that business people are going to love this thing. Their compliance costs are through the roof with the current income tax system. You take all that away and just let them concentrate on their business, they're going to love it. I guarantee you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then finally, I was amazed when he said there's like 46,000 pieces of legislation in Congress every year.
Wow.
46,000. That tells me that we really have our work cut out for us, because we have to make the fair tax, like he said, stick your arm in that vortex of legislation and make sure you get noticed. And that's just what the Americans for Fair Taxation are doing.
Amen. So that's why we would encourage you to join Americans for Fair Taxation. You may do so at www.fairtax.org. You may join at any level you want to. We do need some financial support, but more than that, we need to have you counted as a fair tax supporter, and we can show these Congress critters, as you call them, that it's something that we, the people, really want.
That's right. And I can't emphasize membership too much, all right? Please do what you can to be not only become a member, but inform everybody you know about the membership in AFFT. It's very important.
Okay, like us on Facebook. Also, be sure to pick up FairTax Power Radio on YouTube and SoundCloud.com. And that's about all the time we've got. So until next time, I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
Saying the fair tax, once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
Don't stand in the way.